Hi everyone, I'm Kodasha. So today I'm going to be taking a look at a comparison between the LEGO Mindstorms 31313 set, which was recently discontinued by LEGO, compared to the 51515 Robot Inventor set. The topics that I'll be touching on today is the target market for this set, the common arguments normally made against the 51515 set, the features of the 51515 set, and my conclusion. Now, as far as I can tell, the target market is children aged 10 to 12 years old. I know that a lot of adults buy Mindstorms, and I myself buy Mindstorms, but the target market remains children between 10 to 12 years old. Maybe some are younger, maybe some are older, but it's roughly about that range. And in my country, Malaysia, this is likely to be the only robotics set that they own. They're not going to be like an adult fan of Lego with millions of parts and very well organized storage bins. Quite likely, this is going to be the only set that they have. In most families, they will have access to a computer, either a PC or Mac, most likely a PC, and a mobile device such as an iPhone or a Samsung phone, anything else such as a Lenovo phone, anything which is Android based. And it is highly likely that these households will have access to a gaming console such as the PlayStation or Xbox. Okay. Now, I want you to keep this in mind, this target market in mind, as I go through the rest of this presentation. And I'm just going to say right up front now, I'm not going to come to the conclusion that 51515 is better than 31313 or 31313 is better than 51515. But in some situations, you might find that the 31313 set is better for you. In other situations, you might find that the 51515 set is better for you. So let's take a look at the next topic, which are the common arguments. So a lot of people, it's like, oh, don't buy this set. It hasn't got a display. Or don't buy this set. Okay, it's got fixed wires. Let's actually look at all this, and then we're going to break this down and see it in more detail. So the common arguments are no display, less memory, no expansion slot, a less powerful processor, fixed wires, less ports, no daisy chaining possible, no on-brick programming possible, and third-party support. So the first thing, no display. I do like the display on the EV3 set. I've used it, to simulate. I put pictures on it. I've done animations on it. But when all is said and done, it is actually a black and white display that is not backlit. And over a distance of more than a few feet, it becomes illegible. Whereas the 51515 display is a very large matrix of 5 by 5 pixels. The intensity of each pixel can be controlled, so it's actually a little bit more lively than what the picture suggests. And it remains very legible even at long distances. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is the expansion. And here EV3 has a clear advantage. It has a USB port, which you can put in a wireless dongle. And it also has an SD card slot, which you can actually use for additional programs. And you can even install EV3 Dev, which is a very powerful environment that you can use to program your brick in Python. So if you need that, you absolutely must get the EV3 brick because 51515 doesn't have that. But going back to the target market, kids 10 to 12 years old and the parent buying it for the kid, it is less important because for most of these kids, it's going to be a struggle for them just to get through the Scratch programming, and they probably are not at the level where they'll be installing a new OS onto their bricks. And MicroPython is actually included, which we'll have more to say on later. Now here, this is actually true. The 51515 set's programmable hub has a less powerful processor, but as far as the target market is concerned, it's not a huge deal. Kids 10 to 12 years old are not going to worry too much about one processor being 300 megahertz and one processor being 100 megahertz. For instance, I'll just give you an example. If you go to mindcuber.com, you'll be able to see that you can build a Rubik's Cube solver using either the EV3 set or the Spike Prime set. And the programmable hub in the Spike Prime set is actually the same as that in the very similar to the one in the 51515 set. And it is able to solve Rubik's Cubes, even though it is a little slower than the EV3. You'll also note that the NXT, which is the model before the EV3, can also do this too. So again, based on the target market, the difference in processor speeds are probably not going to matter too much. Next, we come to the topic of fixed wires. Yes, if you're an advanced builder, you would want a custom wires. You can buy third-party wires, which is more than 1 meter in length. And if you're a school, we've got where you have hundreds of kids using the sets. If you have detachable wires, it's a godsend, because if the wire breaks, you don't have to replace the whole motor. But in the environment that I'm talking about here, home environment, it is probably that the set is not going to be heavily used as much as it would be in the school environment. And do note that LEGO has a lot of devices with fixed wires, such as the power functions, motors, and battery boxes. All of those are having fixed wires. The LEGO Boost set has fixed wires, and they seem to be okay. And if you need extension cables, PV Productions do sell an extension cable that you can use with all these devices and equipment. Less ports. It is true that the EV3 has got 4 motor ports, which you can attach motors to, and 4 sensor ports, which you can attach sensors to. So it comes to a total of 8 ports. Now, the 51515 set has only 6 ports, but those ports can be used for either motors or sensors. And again, in the context of a kid, 10 to 12 years old, and the parents just bought the set for them, they've only got 4 motors and 1 ultrasonic sensor and 1 color sensor. So that's 6 ports. So it's already used up all the ports, and it's not really likely that they are going to stress over the fact that they can't plug in anything else. Again, if you're an adult and you want to do advanced stuff with you want to do advanced stuff with your programmable brick, EV3 might be a better solution for you. But that doesn't mean that Spike isn't a good solution. That doesn't mean that the 51515 set isn't a good solution for its target market. Daisy chaining, absolutely. If you need daisy chaining, if you want to hook up 4 bricks together and drive 16 motors, by all means, get the 31313 set. It is possible that a later update will give this capability to the 51515 set. Quite possibly in the programming environment, you can recognize more than 1 brick and then program them so that they work together. If you see online the set 42100, that is the LEGO Technic Liber set, you can see it uses 2 Control Plus hubs, which are managed by the app. So the app manages both Control Plus hubs simultaneously. So quite possibly in a later update, this is going to be introduced. But at the moment, if you need daisy chaining, get the 31313 set. No on-brick programming. Yes, it is very handy that you're able to program the 31313 brick using just the screen and the buttons that are on the brick. This is handy. It's just that in my experience teaching kids, hardly anyone uses this environment. It makes sense in the schools where, you know, setting up devices to connect to the hub is a hassle, especially when there's a lot of kids. But again, in the context of a user who is a 10 to 12-year-old kid playing with this set at home and already has a device which can be connected to the set, this is less important. So I would say that for this target market, it is perfectly adequate. Now let's take a look at some of the 51515 features. Okay, so let's start with the programmable hub. It boots faster, it's lighter, it has a rechargeable battery as standard, it has got the 6 universal ports, and it has a built-in accelerometer and gyro. Let's take a look at each feature in more detail. Now I've got a short video here which is going to show you the difference of the boot times between the 31313 programmable brick and the 51515 programmable brick. And here you can see quite easily that the 51515 brick boots faster. Now this may not mean a lot to you if you're an adult, but to a kid I can tell you, based on my experience teaching kids, that 30-second delay is really annoying to a lot of kids. And we're up. Now this is a point that I don't know how many people will actually consider this to be valid, but for me it is incredibly useful to have a lighter brick. Now what I have here is a Spike Prime model, not the 515 model, not the 51515 model, but it uses a similar programmable brick. And you can see that the structure for the legs is actually rather flimsy, but it has got no problem at all supporting this lighter brick. There is no way that I could have built this machine using the 31313 brick without substantial reinforcement of the legs. So lighter, it actually does make a lot of sense for me. Next is the rechargeable battery. I love the fact that 31313 you can use double A's. I love the fact. But I also love the fact that 51515 has a rechargeable battery, because the advantages here are the battery can be charged when it's in the brick, and when I'm low on power, all I need to do is plug the USB cable into the brick. I've designed a lot of my models using 51515 so that that USB port is accessible, so I do not have to take my model apart in order to replace the batteries. Whereas for 31313, a lot of the time you'll have to partially disassemble the model just so that you can replace the batteries inside the programmable brick. Now I mentioned earlier that 51515's programmable brick has universal ports. This is what I mean. You can see that I've hooked up 6 motors to the brick, and you can see that all of them are running at the same time. So if you wanted to do a model with 6 motors and the accelerometer, you can do it. You can do it now. 31313, you could attach 4 motors maximum. Even though you've got another 4 ports, those ports are only for sensors. You can't attach a motor to those unless you want to use the motor as an input. In the same way that you can attach motors to all 6 ports, you can also attach sensors to all 6 ports. So at the moment I've only got 5 sensors, but you can see in the screenshot that all the sensors are being recognized. And this is really super cute. This is really super nice to have an accelerometer and gyro. So you can see when I'm playing this video, you can see I'm tilting the brick, and you can see the yaw, pitch, and roll angles are being registered. Now let's look at the motors that come with the 51515 set. You get 4 motors, and these motors are easy to integrate because they have a regular shape and they have lots of connection points. They are also smaller in size than the EV3 large motors. The next feature of the motors that I really like are absolute encoders. You'll see that in a minute. And I really like the flexible wires. The EV3 wires or the 31313 wires, they are rather stiff, and sometimes it's really quite difficult to bend them and make them go where you want them to go. And then the little tab at the end tends to break. It's mitigated by the fact that the wires are easily replaceable, but still, I do like the flexible wires with the connectors that are robust. So let's look at the connection points. You can see here is one of the motors, 3 of the motors that come with a 51515 set. You can see there's connection points behind, on the left side, and on the right side. So plenty of ways to attach motors into your models. Now the next feature is absolute encoders, and I love this feature. You will notice on each of the 51515 motors, there's a little dot on the hub, which aligns to a dot on the casing. This is the absolute position indicator for position 0. That means wherever I move the motor, it doesn't matter which angle I rotate, it can always return back to the 0 point. And this is something that is not present in the EV3. So I'm just going to do a short demo. So you can see I'm just moving it to a different angle. Then I run the program. It will take the shortest path back to position 0. Now I move it to another location. Again, it takes the shortest path back to 0. Let's move it all the way to the back. And it's back to 0. So if you're building a color sorter or you're building a steering system, this is incredibly useful. Now the picture that you're seeing here shows you just how flexible those wires are. Because if I was using the 31313 set, there is no way that I could have bent the wires at that angle or connected the two motors back to back with a hitch connector as you see here. It's just not possible. Let's take a look at the sensors now, all right? And ultrasonic and color sensors included in the box. Now, the 31313 set has infrared sensor, a color sensor, and a touch sensor. So it does seem that, you're missing a sensor, but bear with me. First of all, ultrasonic sensors are much more accurate than infrared sensors are. The handy thing about the infrared sensor is that you're able to use the included remote, but for the 51515 set, you can use your smart device as a remote, so that's still there. And I do believe I've read an interview with the designers for the 51515 set, where they said that they would rather have an additional motor rather than the touch sensor, because they found that you can actually use the color sensor as a touch sensor. It can actually detect your finger if you put it on the sensor. Also bear in mind that the hub has an accelerometer, which means you can even tap the hub to detect the touch. Now, one of the things which I did not expect is the pin breakout. If you look at the ultrasonic sensor, there's a couple of screws. If you detach the front part of the ultrasonic sensor from the rear, you'll notice a pin out that enables you to connect all manner of electronic devices. So more details are at this link, which I'll put in the video description. Parts. Oh my god, there is so many parts in this set. It makes the 31313 part selection looks very Spartan by comparison. And of the parts that you get, you've got two small turntables, one large turntable, and the differential, which is something that you don't get in the 31313 set. One of the things that I do miss from the 31313 set are the tracks. I really like having tracks because you can build all-terrain vehicles, and you can build like things like bobcats and tractors, and that is one thing which I sorely miss, and I wish 51515 had that. Okay, let's take a quick look at the software now. All right, now for the EV3 set, the 31313 set, you do have software for Mac and Windows, and you do have software for iOS and Android, but it does not have the same capabilities. You'll find that the software for the 31313 on iOS and Android, they have a cut down functionality. They don't have all the blocks that the Mac and PC software has. But in the 51515, all versions have the same user interface. All versions have the same capabilities. The next thing which I really like is that you don't need to pair before you turn the software on to look for the device. For the most part, you just launch the software, you press the button on the programmable brick, it starts to broadcast Bluetooth, and then the software can just connect. Great thing here, program files can be shared between devices. If I have something on my computer, my Mac, and I want to transfer it to my iPhone, I can use AirDrop to transfer it. I can just email it, and then my iPhone will be able to use that program that I wrote using the Mac, which is really preferable because the Mac's screen is large and I can program more easily on the Mac than on a device. But I can still program on the device. The interface is just slightly smaller. Now, the 31313 set, okay, you can install EV3dev on it and you can have Python, but you would need to make use of the SD card slot because the EV3dev needs to be put onto the SD card. Then you plug in the SD card onto the programmable brick and then you start it up. But for 51515, you'll find that Scratch and Python is available out of the box. There's nothing that you need to do. You can just use it. It's nice that it can be controlled with a PlayStation or Xbox controller. However, bear in mind that there is substantial lag. So it will not, there is substantial latency. It's okay for, for kids, but probably not something that older children or adults would be happy with. Finally, you can install the firmware of the Spike Prime onto the 51515 brick. You can just download the Spike Prime software, and if you prefer that, you can actually install that and use that to program the 51515 brick. Now here is a screenshot from the Mac and iPhone. Note that the interface is the same. It's just that the iPhone interface is smaller. Here is a screenshot showing you the choice that you make when you create a new program. You can either choose a Scratch or you can use a Python. If you go and build the MVP robot, you'll see a couple of the missions make use of the external game controllers. You can either use the Xbox controller or the PlayStation controller. So again, bear in mind the target market that I'm referring to here. We are talking about kids 10 to 12 years old whose parents just want to buy them something for Christmas so that they can play with robotics. So for most customers in this age group, in this target market, 51515 is a great set to get started with robotics. If you need EV3 specific features, like you need the display, you need to be able to daisy chain your programmable bricks together, you need to do on-brick programming. Okay, 31313 is still available on the secondary market, or if you prefer to buy something new, you'll be happy to know that the LEGO Education version of the EV3 set, which is set 45544, is still available from LEGO Education. So I hope this has been interesting and informative. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and take care.